The LA Kings fall short, trying to get back-to-back shootout wins as they go into the Four Nations break. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app and create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL and you will get $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on today's show, we've got some big news involving Kings veteran defenseman Drew Doughty. But first, the Kings closed out their 3-game homestand before the 2-week break for the Four Nations Faceoff. It was game 53 of the season for the LA Kings as they hosted the Anaheim Ducks in the annual Freeway Faceoff. Kings were looking to improve on the best home ice winning percentage in the NHL, coming into the game with a 16-3-1 record. LA was also 2-0 against the Ducks head-to-head this season and won 11 of 12 against Anaheim. Some very interesting lineup changes in this one for the Kings. We start with the Kings going back to the 11-7 setup with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. Now, there were some rumblings that this was going to take place sooner rather than later, and I thought that maybe it would be when Mikey Anderson came back from his injury. That was not the case, as Anderson was once again not in the lineup in this game. As a matter of fact, he was placed on injured reserve by the Kings on Saturday. We'll talk about why that was the case in a moment. But as for the Kings lineup in this game against Anaheim, it would be Anze Kopitar centering the top line with Adrian Kempe and Alex Turcotte. The second line was Philip Deneau centering Warren Foegele and Trevor Moore. The third line, Quentin Byfield with Alex Ferrier and Kevin Fiala. And the fourth line was Trevor Lewis with Tanner Jeannot. And typically, you would have that extra forward rotating in on the fourth line, and Akil Thomas, by the way, out of the lineup. But that's actually not what happened in this game. Most of the game, Alex Turcotte, actually played on the third line with Trevor Lewis and Tanner Jeannot, and the extra forward was rotated through the top line with Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe. So a different wrinkle to the 11-7 in this one. So again, no Mikey Anderson. So the defensive pairings were Vladislav Gavrikov and Drew Doughty, the top pairing, Joel Edmondson and Brandt Clark, the second pairing, Jacob Moverara and Jordan Spence, the third pairing, with Kyle Burroughs serving as the extra defenseman. So with the Kings putting veteran defenseman Mikey Anderson on injured reserve, the move was made because they needed to add a player to the roster. It was not, all indications are that Mikey Anderson was not placed on injured reserve because there has been some sort of a setback to his injury, or it's nothing, it's no bad news. It looks like, again, all indications were before this and after this, Mikey Anderson will return soon after the Four Nations face-off break, which is 2 weeks. So Mikey was put on injured reserve so the Kings could add a player to their roster. And that brings us to our goalie situation against the Ducks. The two goaltenders for the game against Anaheim were David Riddick and Phoenix Copley. Anderson, again, placed on injured reserve, Mikey Anderson, so the Kings could have a roster spot and call up Phoenix Copley. Now, why did the Kings need Phoenix Copley? Well, Darcy Kemper has left the team for what is being called personal reasons. Now, as you may know, Darcy and his wife just welcomed a new child. Fingers crossed that this has nothing to do with any health issues with his newborn. No details were provided by the Kings on this, and Darcy Kemper is certainly entitled to his privacy unless he wants to share at some point the reason why he left the team for personal reasons. I'm just saying, he just had the child. He and his wife just had the child. That was obviously a huge event, and maybe that has something to do with it, or maybe it doesn't. But like I said, fingers crossed that everybody is healthy, and maybe this was just something precautionary. But it was certainly a bit out of the blue because if you recall, Darcy was the backup to David Riddick in the previous game on the previous night against the Dallas Stars. So an interesting decision as well for the Kings to call up Phoenix Copley and not young goaltender Eric Portillo from the Ontario Reign in the AHL, especially since Copley didn't get the start against Anaheim. I had assumed Copley was called up because the Kings thought it would be better to go with a veteran goalie in kind of an emergency situation than to call up the kid, quote unquote, the kid, Eric Portillo, and kind of throw him in there, even though Portillo did beat the Ducks in his NHL debut earlier this season. But the Kings decided to go with David Riddick on back-to-back nights, something you rarely see in the NHL. And sure, the Kings are going to have 2 weeks off after this game, so David Riddick's going to get a lot of rest. So I'm sure that factored into it. But again, it was a very interesting decision for the Kings to go with David Riddick on back-to-back nights. Now, also interesting that the Kings would call up Phoenix Copley and not Eric Portillo because of the waiver situation. Phoenix Copley is a veteran player. Now, when he gets sent back down to Ontario, he will have to clear through waivers. And there is the risk another team could claim him. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that Phoenix Copley is a player that is sought after. But if you don't have to risk it, why risk it? Now, the Ontario Reign did play a game Saturday night as well. They lost in San Diego to the Gulls, the Ducks AHL affiliate, 5-4 in overtime, and Eric Portillo was in net in that one. But I can't imagine that the reason the Kings wouldn't call up Eric Portillo was because they wanted him to play in that game. The Ontario Reign serve at the pleasure of the LA Kings. In other words, what is best for the NHL team was always going to take precedent over what is best for the AHL team. So again, I don't know why this decision was made. Perhaps there's a good reason I'm unaware of, but again, it was very odd not only to call up Phoenix Copley, but then not to play him. And now you got to risk him going back on waivers. And if it was Eric Portillo, he could come up and go back down without having to go through waivers. And also very, very interesting that the Kings decided to go with David Riddick on back-to-back nights. All right, all that leading up to the big question for me going into this game. How would the Kings bounce back after a thrilling and albeit energy-draining 5-4 shootout win over the Dallas Stars the previous night? And also now, after finding out the goaltending situation, throw in there, how would David Riddick play starting on back-to-back nights? As far as the game summary in the game between the Kings and Ducks, well, we had no goals in the first period. Anaheim had a slight edge in shots on goal over the Kings, 9-8. No goals in the second period. The Kings out shooting the Ducks 15-10 in period number 2. And it was starting to feel like in the third period that the first goal was going to win. And unfortunately for Kings fans, the Ducks would score that first shot, a point shot with David Riddick screened in front. However, the Kings would respond late with defenseman Adrian Kempe scoring his 25th goal of the season. We'll explain what that switch was all about. The Kings outshooting the Ducks 16-5 in the third period, tying it up. And then going into overtime, the Kings would outshoot the Ducks in overtime, 5-2, but no goals were scored. So we would go to a shootout for a second straight game. And that is where the Ducks would convert on their first 2 chances in the shootout. LA would be stopped on their first 2 chances, and the Ducks would skate off with a 2-1 win over the LA Kings. On the season, the Kings dropped to 29-17-7, 17-3-2 at home. They did get a point for the overtime or for the shootout loss. The Kings on this 3-game homestand went 2-0-1, and the Kings still in that third spot in the Pacific Division. So your game stats in this one, the Kings losing 2-1 in a shootout. LA outshot Anaheim 44-26. The specialty teams, Kings were over 3 on the power play. Ducks were over 2. Faceoffs favored the Kings 34-23. Hits favored Anaheim 18-14, and block shots favored the Kings 21-15. So what was pretty good from a team standpoint for the LA Kings in this one? Well, obviously some pretty good defense and goaltending. holding the Ducks to just the one goal in regulation and overtime. Good for the Kings to have a lot of shot attempts as the game wore on. The penalty kill continues to be a positive. Pretty impressed that the Kings seemed to get stronger as the game went on, even though they had played overtime and the shootout the previous night. What was not so good for the Kings from a team standpoint, not converting on enough offensive chances. Power play continues to struggle. And while the power play has been a bit better at home this season, you wouldn't know it by how the Kings performed with the man advantage during this homestand where they went 0-for-6 on the power play. Coach's quote from Jim Hiller, he said, quote, "I just don't think we were ready to play as hard as we needed to, as hard as we had to physically. I think it took us some time to get into the game and understand how hard it is and how it's going to be. That to me is where it was. It's mental. It's partially physical because the mind drives the body. And I think until the mind got right, we weren't very good," end quote. My big takeaway from the loss to the Ducks, I didn't think the Kings played terrible, but certainly obviously not good enough to win, and obviously offensively not good enough. I do think you have to give some credit to Ducks goaltender Lucas Dostal. He looks like he's going to be a pretty good goalie. Not as good as Ed and Brea thinks he's going to be, but he certainly had a very strong game. And I think you do need to be fair and give credit to the other team's netminder. The Kings, to me, seemed to be a bit physically and mentally drained after that wild, thrilling shootout victory the night before. Certainly makes sense they wouldn't have maybe quite that intensity, but still a very disappointing end to a couple of pretty good games for the LA Kings. They do get a point out of the loss for Anaheim, but again, still a disappointing result. Up next, we're going to get into some individual performances for the LA Kings against the Ducks. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Those of us that live in Southern California, so lucky we have so many opportunities to see live events, sports, concerts, theater events, comedy shows. And when you check out those events, you're going to have to get tickets, and you need to use Gametime. For all your ticket needs, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. It makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the flub, shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And the all-in pricing feature shows you the total up front, no surprise fees at checkout. And you can also check out your seat with the panoramic view in the app before you buy it, so you know exactly the vantage point you're going to get. And you'll get the lowest price guaranteed, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, let's check out some individuals in the Kings game against the Anaheim Ducks. And of course, we always start with the goaltender. That would be David Rittich for a second straight game. Allowed one goal on 26 shots. The one goal he allowed, I mentioned it, a point shot with traffic in front. I thought Rittich was just okay the night before in the game against Dallas. I thought he was better in this game against Anaheim. Certainly good enough to give the Kings a very good chance to win. Pretty amazing considering that he was, again, starting on back-to-back nights. I don't know the last time he played 2 games in 2 days. I'm pretty sure he's never done it as a King. He may have never done it in his career. I don't know about that. But all in all, I thought David Rittich played a pretty solid game. He didn't look great in the shootout compared to the night before. But one goal allowed in regulation and overtime. That's obviously a pretty good effort. Big save Dave did his job, I thought, in this game against the Ducks. On the season now, David Rittich has a record of 12-11-1. On home ice, he's now 9-2-1. Adrian Kempe scored the Kings' lone goal of the game late in the third period to help LA at least get a point out of this game, and a great move by Kings head coach Jim Hiller. Late in the game, he puts Kempe on the ice as a defenseman, looking to get some extra offense on the ice and try to get the game-tying goal, which eventually happened as Kempe and Philip Deneau had a nice passing play. Deneau feeding Kempe right down the slot for the game-tying goal. And of course, Jim Hiller able to make that move because of Adrian Kempe's solid defensive game. He's not a liability back there on defense. Obviously, not as good as a defenseman, but for a forward, pretty good. I thought it was a great move by Jim Hiller, and it paid off for Kempe, his 25th goal of the season, and the fourth time in his career, fourth straight times now, that he has 25 or more goals in a season. By the way, I mentioned that nice move by Jim Hiller. I didn't mention it the other day, but Jim Hiller, with the win over Dallas, became the fastest Kings coach ever to reach 50 wins. He did it in 86 games with a record at the time of 50, 29, and 7. Quinton Byfield, I mentioned on Friday's show after the win over the Stars, where Q had 3 assists, that he could have had a monster game if he would have converted on a couple of his scoring opportunities, his goal scoring opportunities. No points in the loss to the Ducks, but Q had some very, very good chances. And I feel like once he figures it out, he could be that player that we're all hoping that he will be. And I know that some of you are not satisfied with him just playing good defense and bringing energy and all that kind of stuff. But he lately has been getting some really good looks at the net. I think he had 3 grade A scoring chances in the game against the Ducks. One right off the top where he shot it between his legs over the net. Would have been an amazing goal. But I'm pretty confident that Q is going to figure it out. Now, he's 22. If you recall, Adrian Kempe took many years to finally find his scoring touch and become a elite scorer in the NHL and a great all-around player. The fact that Quinton Byfield lately has been putting himself in great positions to score, I think, is a very good sign. I've always admitted I'm a glass is half full kind of guy, but I just don't think that this is blind faith in Quinton Byfield. I see him progressing. I see him getting good scoring chances, and if he can just convert on some of those, he will turn into the player I think that we all hope he will be. Hopefully that comes sooner rather than later. But when it does, it's obviously going to be a very good thing for the LA Kings. Did want to mention Trevor Lewis, the veteran forward, finally honored for playing in his 1,000th NHL game. Played in that 1,000th game on January the 4th, but then he got hurt, and there was like a planned ceremony that he was hurt for. And then they planned it for a different time, and then the wildfires happened. So I think it was like the 3rd or 4th time was finally the charm, as Trevor's family was there to enjoy the milestone night and to see him get honored. He got a stick from the team. When a player plays in 1,000 games, they get like this chrome silver stick. He also got like a watch from his teammates. I think the organization gave him like a piece of artwork or whatever. Should be pointed out that Trevor Lewis has not played all of those 1,000 games as a member of the LA Kings. 796 of them, though, has come in a Kings sweater. Lewis is 8th all-time in Kings history in games played, only 10 away from passing Rob Blake into 7th place. By the way, Trevor Lewis had a couple of really good scoring chances in this game, and for a while I kind of thought it might be an extra special night for Trevor by him getting the lone goal of the game. Unfortunately, that did not happen. As for Trevor Lewis, he did say afterwards, quote, "I don't like the attention too much. That was pretty cool. The video, seeing my kids and my wife, it was a pretty special moment, something I'll never forget." End quote. He is at a very, very solid NHL career, has Trevor Lewis, a part of course, both the Stanley Cup winning teams with the Kings. Did want to mention Philip Deneau, primary assist on the Kempe goal. Phil now has a goal and 5 assists in his last 4 games. Kevin Fiala's goal streak came to an end. He came into the game with 5 goals in 3 games, but held off the score sheet in this one. Drew Doughty, I thought of the 6 games that Drew has played since his comeback, I thought the last 2, including this one, were his best. Did have some nice defensive plays, had some shots on net from the point early, and played 31 minutes and 9 seconds in this game. Speaking of Drew Doughty, we have some big news regarding him. We will share that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy for you to get in on the action with the live betting all game long, and you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds. and you can feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets on the Super Bowl, that is icing on the cake. It is the Kansas City Chiefs against the Philadelphia Eagles. Download the Gametime app, head to FanDuel.com and get started. Bet $5 and you could win $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. So the LA Kings are now off for 2 weeks and will return to action on Saturday, February the 22nd at home against the Utah Hockey Club. Now, we knew that one member of the Kings, standout forward Adrian Kempe, would be participating in the Four Nations Faceoff for his native Sweden during the 2 weeks coming up. We found out during the Kings-Ducks game that Kings defenseman Drew Doughty was in fact selected to play for Team Canada in the event as well. Drew was asked what it meant for him to be selected to play for Team Canada after the game. He said, quote, "It means a lot right now. When I got injured this year, that was honestly my first thought, that I can't make the team and play in the tournament. And then I heard about Pietrangelo unfortunately going down, and right away I just tried to get back into the lineup and tried to make the team. I think a lot of people had written me off, so I'm really proud to make the team. And anytime you put that jersey, it means the world to me. So I'm ready to go," end quote. That was Kings defenseman Drew Doughty on being selected to play in the Four Nations Faceoff for Team Canada. One little bit of a clarification: Vegas Golden Knights defenseman Alex Pietrangelo didn't go down. He's not hurt, or at least he's not hurt enough where he isn't playing. He played for the Vegas Golden Knights in their game Saturday in Boston. Now, he pulled out of the event to rest up, maybe heal up a bit for the rest of the season and likely the postseason for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, I don't know how the majority of Kings fans feel about Drew Doughty and Adrian Kempe playing in this event. I appreciate that both want to represent their countries, and it is a big honor for them to be selected. Drew Doughty clearly has a passion to play for his country, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I think, frankly, that a big part of why he was selected was because of how enthusiastic he is about playing for the Canadian team. And I got to be honest, and last time I checked, I'm not Canadian, but I honestly think I would feel the same way if Drew Doughty was an American. And I feel the same way about Adrian Kempe playing for Sweden. I, as a Kings fan, would prefer if they did not play in this event. I care about the Kings season, not this event. So I would prefer that they do not risk injury. And yes, the Kings are paying them to play for the Kings, not for Team Canada or Team Sweden. But the NHL wants this event, and obviously the teams do have to sign on it to allow their players to play in this event. Now, it would be wrong and likely not looked upon well by the league if the Kings somehow tried to persuade Kempe or Doughty or both not to play in this event. Now, maybe for Drew, this could be a positive. He's only played in 6 games so far this season, and the extra work and the extra ice time, the extra preparation maybe makes him a better player down the stretch, and hopefully down the stretch and into the playoffs for the LA Kings. But unlike Adrian Kempe, Drew Doughty doesn't need the rest. He's ready to go, and he's excited to play. And I wish them both well. I mostly wish them both good health. But I'm not a big fan of Adrian Kempe or Drew Doughty playing in this event. And that's part of the reason why I'm not really looking forward to this event. I'm definitely going to watch it. We're definitely going to talk about it because we need something to talk about. And wouldn't you know it, on Wednesday, it will be Drew Doughty and Team Canada against Adrian Kempe and Team Sweden. So that should be very interesting indeed. Before we go, I did want to give a shout out to a couple of fans of this show that I met at the Kings-Ducks game. I wanted to say it was great to meet Chad and Kyle. Very cool that both of them are somewhat new Kings fans in the last couple of years. They have really gotten into the LA Kings, and this show apparently has kind of helped them become more informed Kings fans, and I'm very excited to know that that was the case. So again, guys, it was great to meet you guys, Chad and Kyle, and on your way to being great Kings fans. And thank you so much for your support of this show as well. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Sunday's show, we'll get a little more into the Four Nations tournament. Maybe you're not familiar with it. We'll tell you a little bit more what it's about and why the Kings, why the NHL is holding this event. And also talk about some good things and bad things that come with playing in an event like this. Also, if you want to get involved in feedback with the show, if you want to send an email, we have a Friday fan feedback show that we read emails on. The email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And you're always welcome to post your thoughts on each show in the comments section if you're watching on YouTube. And we'd love to stay interactive with the show on X, Twitter, Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.